Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're excited to see you all today. We're really I'm Ashley, and I manage Financial Narrative, for those of you who don't already know me. We are really excited to have some excellent experts with us today to talk about the institutions that really underpin our finance system and the challenges of doing marketing and communications for those particular institutions. So I will go ahead and hand this session over to Marie from the DTCC, who is hosting with us today. Thanks, Marie.
Great. Thank you so much, Ashley, and welcome, everyone. I am Marie Chenese-Everett. I am DTCC's Global Chief Marketing Officer with responsibility for all of our corporate communications, marketing, branding, and public policy communications. It's really a great honor to be here, and I'm thrilled to be joined by two of my counterparts, Dipti Kapchu from Broadridge and Greg McSweeney from the Clearinghouse. And I'd just like to give them each a moment to introduce themselves. So Dipti, why don't you start?
Hey, Marie, thank you for that handoff. It's great to be here. I'm Dipti Kapchu. I lead marketing globally for Broadridge Financial Solutions. I've been in the industry for about 20 years. Primarily in financial services across asset and wealth management, consumer banking, so B2B, B2C, and a mix of it all. And I've been now at Broadridge for about 16 months. Greg, over to you.
Great, thank you, Dipti. So I'm Greg McSweeney. I'm head of communications here at the Clearinghouse. I've been in this role since 2018. And prior to that, I was a journalist. I covered financial services and financial technology for about 15 years in insurance, banking, and capital markets. So that's a little bit about me.
Great. Well, we're going to jump into the questions. I have the pleasure of being both today's moderator and a panelist, and Greg is going to let me know how well I did asking questions at the end of today's event. So we're going to jump right in. And Greg, I'm going to actually ask you to start. The first question is to talk just a little bit about the role that your organization plays and how you currently differentiate yourself in the marketplace.
Great. Yeah. So the Clearinghouse, a lot of people haven't heard about the Clearinghouse. The Clearinghouse, we've been around for a rather long time, 170 years exactly, 170-year anniversary this year. So we've been around before the Federal Reserve was here. We've been through numerous world wars and financial crises and everything like that. But most recently, we've been here during the electronic payments era, which goes back about 45 years. We are the largest we're the largest private sector payments organization in the world. We clear about $2.1 trillion, clear and settle about $2.1 trillion every day. That's across our ACH payments rails, wire payments, check imaging, which check imaging is still a product line of ours. And most recently, the newest payments product we have is our real-time payments. Differentiating ourselves was never really a thought process here at the Clearinghouse going back years. We were comfortable. If you didn't hear about us, that was a good thing. That means our payment systems were up and running. There were no problems. Your payments were going through, whether you're a corporate, whether you're a consumer, and we were just behind the scenes. Since we launched our real-time payments rail, our RTP in 2017, obviously we're taking a little different tack. We're actually going out to the market a little bit more. So now we have to differentiate along in terms of what we're doing in real time, how that's keeping up with the economy, how that's shifting the way payments are made, both for consumers and businesses, and tell our story that way. So that's a little bit about the Clearinghouse and how we're kind of in the marketplace nowadays.
Great. I'm just going to pick up quickly because there's a lot of similarities between your story and DTCC, as though I will have to say that I am a much younger sister. DTCC is actually only celebrating its 50-year anniversary this year, not 170. So I feel quite youthful right now. But we were actually born out of the paperwork crisis in the late 1960s and the 1970s. So we started one office in New York City, and we've grown now to 20 locations around the globe, and we process the equivalent of US $2.5 quadrillion in transactions annually. We basically are the backbone of the financial industry. We clear and settle trades for the US securities markets. And we do all of the post-trade operations for the securities industry in the US. We have a number of global businesses that have grown. Our institutional trade processing businesses from matching services, also have trade reporting services through our repository and derivative services division as well. So we lean into our history, which we are certainly doing this year, but our goal is to be a very purposeful and responsible innovator, and to lead change for the industry. We have a lot of trust that has been built up over our 50 years, and we need to continue to invest in that and sustain it, but also continue to lead the industry forward through the many advancements of new technologies. And, now we're in a world that, includes cryptocurrency and digital assets, which, may be the next phase of our evolution. So with that, I will hand it to Dipti.
Yeah, lots of points of connectivity, and Marie, what you said and what Greg did. So Broadridge is a global financial technology company that delivers technology solutions and infrastructure that really powers investing. When you think about investing from an investor's vantage point, enabling asset managers, wealth managers, and in the capital market. So yeah, very similarly, we're sort of the platform and the infrastructure underneath. A large part of what we're known for beyond the post-trade side is also on the governance side, and the work we do to enable the proxy process and investor communications as you think about more and more investors entering the markets and how we enable that. So that's, I've been, like I mentioned, at Broadridge for about 16 months, and part of this journey has been learning about Broadridge, because again, I knew, like a lot of us knew Broadridge as the name sitting on the outside, but I couldn't tell you what we did. And it's been the journey of peeling back the layers of the onion to figure out what's really relevant in the story, what's the magic, right? Where's the differentiation? So when I think about our differentiation, I think core to it is, again, we've got the 60-year history. We were spun off from ADP, but part of it is the infrastructure and the networks that we connect across investors, asset managers, issuers, and wealth managers. Now, if you start to think about those pipes are required to make investing happen. And that's the role we play in the market. So there's the network value. It also means that we process, just like you guys, lots and lots and lots of data. And so you have a sense of, it's a unique vantage point of being able to guide our clients and investors at the end on where the world's going, how people are investing, what that means in terms of outcomes. And lastly, how we use technology to solve problems, right? We started as an ops-oriented organization. I think we've called ourselves sort of the ops to tech journey. And I really think about it as the tech to impact journey. What's the value of what we do, and how does it make the marketplace better for everybody?
So Dipti, let's pick up on that technology point. So how is Broadridge innovating to remain competitive, as obviously we're all seeing new entrants to the market, new challengers in our space?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the innovation is oriented around real problem solving and intentional innovation as we think about it. Right? And when you think about the front to back orchestration of what it takes to enable the markets, no matter what vantage point you're looking at, how can technology, modern technology, new technologies help solve very specific problems that create more simplification of workflow, make the process more efficient, really deliver on an improved client experience? And so for us, all of these, I would say, drivers and needs to drive better outcomes for our clients is what drives where we innovate and how we use new technology to solve these problems.
Great. And innovation, Greg, from the clearinghouse's perspective, what are you doing to remain competitive, and how are you dealing with that challenge?
Sure. So, over the last few years, probably the last 10 years, payments went from kind of a sleepy ACH, wire, check market. That's everybody had made payments a while ago. All of a sudden now everybody is in payments. There are lots of fintech startups offering payment solutions that are out there. The clearinghouse has its real-time payments rail. Visa and MasterCard are jumping into the game with their real-time payment offerings as well. So it's become a really competitive place, really, in the last 5 to 6 years. So one thing that we do is, so a little bit about our structure, we're owned by 22 large banks here in the US. That's our structure. So a lot of the things that we do is we talk to our banks, we look for things that need to be solved in the industry, and we listen to them, we work with them, we bring ideas to them. Sometimes they take our ideas, sometimes they say, nah, let's worry about that later. But we work with them and make sure that the products that we're putting out are meeting a need for financial services companies, not just our banks, but all banks in the US. So on top of the real-time payments rail that we launched, we've actually added on to that since then. We've come up with a bill payment and a request for payment solution that works with real-time. It's called request for payment, or RFP. We have a document exchange service that goes along with that. And then we also look at some of the security concerns that financial institutions have in the US right now. We have a tokenization product that allows banks on the RTP network or our ACH network to tokenize their account information. So the account information is not flying through the payments rails. It's just a token, and you can shut off that token at any time. And of course, we're also involved in a lot of the open banking work that's going on across the industry. Giving consumers control of their data, but also making sure that it's done safely. So, the innovation comes at the clearinghouse from a lot of different ways. We listen to our banks first, then we go out and develop some solutions, and then we get them out to market. And hopefully we're first, or if we're not first, we're one of the first leaders out there.
Yeah, that's great. And similar to the clearinghouse, DTCC is owned and governed by its clients and the industry as well, which clearly presents opportunities, but also challenges. And we recognize the markets are getting increasingly competitive, and we have to remain relevant. We need to remain a player and not to take our position in the industry for granted. We're leading a lot of really big initiatives for the industry. The move to a T+1 settlement cycle, which is going to happen by the end of May of 2024. And that's a big, big industry mandate. LIBOR cessation and global trade reporting. But we're also modernizing our own technology and delivering new capabilities to the industry. We have an eye to the future. We are exploring very proactively how the newest and latest technologies can help enhance how the financial markets function and operate, how we can continue to protect the industry, remain resilient, but at the same time, help our clients deliver optimum performance to their clients. So it's a big challenge in front of us. And that leads us to some of our marketing techniques. Obviously, in order to reach our stakeholders in a very competitive environment, we need to stay current. People talk a lot about storytelling as part of their marketing kits. How does your organizations use storytelling to help differentiate yourself? Greg, do you want to pick up on that one?
Yeah, that's a great one. So, when I joined here in 2018, a lot of our storytelling was focused on what we do, the kind of the nitty-gritty payments details about how payments are made and how payments go through and how we clear them and how we settle them, which is really interesting if you're what we call a payments nerd, right? If you're a payments person and that's what you do day in and day out, you love that stuff. But that doesn't really translate into a great story for a broader marketplace. Whether you're talking to a corporate customer or an end user, like somebody who just has a bank account, they don't really care how that payment goes through. They just want to make sure it goes through and they get their money and everything is smooth and seamless and a lot less friction. So we started changing our narrative away from telling the nitty-gritty payments details to more stories about how real-time payments, faster payments, secure payments, or more secure payments with tokenization really changes the way payments are made, how consumers are more secure or businesses are more secure with tokenized payments, and give them real examples about how it's impacting their lives. One of the things we did, so for example, one of the things that's really resonated over the past 12 to 18 months is the shift in the marketplace to real-time payroll. We saw that through some of the transaction volume on the RTP network, where all of a sudden we're seeing lots of volume come in through some of the big payments processors who are out there. And we're like, wow, why are they using RTP? We thought payments and payroll, that ACH is good enough for that. Now the market shifted, especially around the time of the pandemic, when people wanted, I want my earned wages now. I have an expense that's coming up. I need to get access to my payments now, access to my wages now. So that story really resonated. So we took that story and we've worked that into a lot of our storytelling about how, hey, this is helping end users, this is helping consumers, and it's also helping businesses, because businesses that can offer real-time payments or real-time wages have a better chance of retaining their employees, because it's a benefit to their employees. It doesn't cost them anything. So we shift from the nitty-gritty of the payments workings, which we thought was really cool, which we still do think is cool because we're payments nerds, to really storytelling, which resonates with more of the marketplace.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, we're marketing to humans. We may be B2B companies, but we are still talking to humans that are the decision makers at those organizations. So sharing stories, sharing narratives that, you know, help evoke emotion and connect those individuals to our solutions, you know, are really important. And similarly at DTCC, you know, we use storytelling quite extensively in our client communications and in our PR for that very reason. You know, we've moved over the last 11 years that I've been at the company from just functional communications to really talking about the benefits of a solution that we're providing and how we're addressing pain points and helping our clients. And that storytelling is really essential to help drive the behaviors that we're looking for. And Dipti, I'm sure it's very similar at Broadridge. Can you share some of it?
It sure is. I think for us, it's about there are a couple of things I'll point to in complete addition to everything both Greg, you and Maria just said. For us, one has been sort of widening the aperture of just the audiences that we think about, right? There's the buyers, and those often might be a little bit more transactional in terms of the stories they want to hear of what the product is and how the product works, and so, you know, the decisions that they need to make as part of the buying process. But then if you widen that aperture a little bit and you think about your investors and you think about, you know, employees as a big part of the narrative, and then of course you think about end customers and investors that are probably one step away, but still are impacted by the decisions we make every single day. And how do you start to bring through relevancy in those stories? So that's one where some are a little bit more human, some are a little bit more technical about sort of the complexity of the technology or the outcome or how new technology is being used. And others are about the impact we have through the communications we sort of deliver. So you've got those. The other thing we're trying to do is to connect our stories to macro themes that the industry deeply cares about, right? When you think about the democratization of investing, we all live it, we've all heard it, we're part of it. Well, what role does Broadridge play in that? How are we enabling that trend? What outcomes do we drive from it? And what is our data telling us to, even if it's not a product that we potentially have or are looking to solve for, it is still relevant investor data that the industry, our clients, can benefit from. So I think there's different angles of the story, but trying to keep them very relevant to the various audiences helps us both prioritize and make sure you know, they're delivering the value.
So we're going to transition to talk a little bit about thought leadership. I mean, that's something that I know each of our organizations you know, aspires to be a thought leader, and you know, we do a lot in this space. You know, Dipti, you want to talk a little bit about how thought leadership plays into your marketing and communications portfolio?
Sure. It's, I would say we're a work in progress when I think about our journey to really making our thought leadership deliver the promise of the organization and the ambition and actually what's happening. And it goes back a little bit to storytelling, right? It's about, are we sharing the insights in the most compelling fashion, right? We share a lot of insights, whether it's through PR or the content we create, right? Or how our sales and account management teams talk about what we're doing at Broadridge and how we're making the industry better. But how it gets packaged has often been, I think, the place we needed to do more work. The other, and you know, I was having this conversation with our PR agency just this morning, which is hold us accountable to tell interesting stories, right? Because we tend to fall in love with our ideas a little bit, and sometimes they could be the Captain Obvious stuff. And sometimes they're truly unique and differentiated, but delivered in a way that doesn't totally land because it's really technical and not everybody gets it. So what's the right balance of pulling our narrative together where it brings through the heart of the thought leadership message? But I mean, listen, is it core to our go-to-market? 100%. It's the anchor to how we deliver on the promise of our brand.
Greg, how about at the clearinghouse?
Yeah, Dipti mentioned something about, how our agencies kind of hold us accountable sometimes, and it's so true. And we tend to get really down into the weeds pretty quickly on our expertise here. So if we're talking about real-time payments or ACH, all of a sudden our thought leaders are diving down into the nitty-gritty. And when I've been on calls and we're talking about new ideas for storytelling, I've had our communications folks, our external firm on the line, and at the end, our thought leaders are all jazzed, they're ready to go, and it's just like crickets. And they're polite, and we all have a laugh about it afterwards. But they're like, you have to keep it relevant. It can't just be for the payments nerds. It has to be for everybody. So our thought leaders, they're in the market. They have a lot of experience here at the clearinghouse. Some of them have 20, 30 years in payments, whether it's ACH or wire, or more recently, not so much real-time payments because it's only 6 years old, but they know the ins and outs of the payments industry. So trying to get that thought leadership out in a way that it's relevant to a broader audience is important. So we do spend a lot of time in the market. A lot of that is industry trade shows and speaking events and talking with analysts. I wouldn't say there's a formal kind of, thought leadership process or SME program here where, we're putting everybody through the steps to make sure they're getting the best out of it. But it's this kind of, hey, we have a request to go speak at Gartner or IT Group or whoever it may be, and we're kind of running around and trying to answer, to be as many places as we can without traveling full time, which you probably could do across the year with all the requests that you get to go to industry events. And that goes for industry events and analysts and webcasts and now virtual events, which are obviously much more plentiful now after the pandemic. And one thing I will add here, we do also have an advocacy arm in Washington, D.C., which advocates with regulators and on the Hill for payments topics, whether it be real-time payments most recently, but also we're looking at things now as CBDCs and crypto, and how does that affect the banking system? How does that affect financial institutions? And what role is that going to play in the future? It's going to play a role, but it depends on how, where it is. And so we do a lot of thought leadership around that too. So we're out there.
You talked about relevance, and that really struck a chord with me because, thought leadership, it has to be relevant and it has to really move and advance your goal with your stakeholders. And at DTCC, really the purpose of our thought leadership is to educate the industry, to align the industry, and to move them, toward action. So, we publish a number of white papers on topics that are relevant and important to the industry. I had mentioned the move to an accelerated settlement cycle, which is incredibly topical right now for all of our clients in the US and abroad and outside the US. We're having these conversations globally. And, we are working to make sure that the industry is ready. And that is really the purpose of our thought leadership, to move people toward, an action. And similar to Greg, the clearinghouse, and Dipti to Broadridge, we leverage all of our channels, whether it's white papers, events, conferences, to make sure that we're engaging our stakeholders in a dialogue. Because it isn't espousing our views, it's really about galvanizing the industry. So we do want to foster a two-way dialogue so that we're all moving in the same direction. So, and that sort of moves us on to, we are 3 organizations with long histories. This is probably the first time I felt really young at 50 years of history, but we have brands that, have a lot of resonance with our stakeholders, but, sometimes that's a positive, in the double-edged sword. Sometimes you're stuck in your legacy. So can you talk about how you are leveraging your organization's history and legacy and moving toward the future, given everything that's happening in today's market? So Dipti, why don't you take that one to start?
Sure. Yeah, it's I would say it is one of my favorite topics because I see legacy, especially if the legacy is a strong legacy, I see legacy as a gift. For us, our legacy sort of is representative of deep trust that the industry has had in us. it's representative of resilience and stability and consistency in a business that is mission critical. This is not stuff you want to screw up because it's regulatory and it's sort of the orchestration of the markets. And so for us, it's been embracing our legacy, but reframing it and making it relevant. It's being able to sort of tell the so what of it. And it's not the zero-sum game, right, of just sort of legacy being old and innovation being new. It's how do you tie those stories together and build the bridge of what's valuable of your legacy and what's new in how you've evolved over the years. And I think, again, this goes back to the power of storytelling. But my way of thinking about it has always been to embrace and reframe legacy to make it more relevant for those who engage with us today.
And as I think about it at DTCC, as we're now well into celebrating our 50-year anniversary, there's a lot of very rich history. Clients trust us. We have been for the industry. And advancing the industry. So that trust is not something that we can take lightly, and we have to continue to maintain and invest in it. But innovation is how we're going to continue to add value. And I think one of the things that is important is that our history has led us to innovating, but not innovation for innovation's sake, purposeful, responsible innovation. So we're not going to necessarily be the first one out there investing in the sexiest new technology because we can. We need to do it in a way that moves the industry forward. That's very purposeful. And continuing to put the client at the center of everything that we do, to prioritize the initiatives we take on, to make sure that we're servicing them and we're not behaving like a utility, that we're moving from being perceived as a utility, which was our history, to being perceived as strategic partners. So it's really building on the history and talking about all of the things that we're going to be doing to compete successfully and to take the industry forward. So it's really striking that right balance. So we're excited about that. And I know, Greg, celebrating 170 years, that's a lot to unpack. So I'm going to hand it over to you to tell us what you are doing at the clearinghouse.
Sure, and something both of you said kind of resonated. Dipti said, we have these core systems that we can't screw up, because there's regulatory burden that goes along with that. So we have to make sure that we're up and running all the time, and our history shows that we are, right? So we're able to rely on that. We're able to talk to prospective banks and credit unions who are looking to join our networks and say, hey, look, we're not some new company that's just coming along with the latest fad product. We're established. We run consistently reliable systems over time. They're always up. They're always running, because if, as I said, said before, if they were not up and running, you would hear about it in the press, and we would be probably down in front of a hearing in Washington. They're up and running. So that history is good when we're talking with financial institutions, when we're looking to talk to them about our networks and our products and why we're valuable and what we're bringing to the table. Sometimes, though, when we're talking about our history, it really doesn't matter to some of our audience members, right? So some corporates, we're speaking in front of some trade shows, Money 2020, FinTech Nexus, 170-year legacy. They're looking at the last 5 years. What have you done for us lately? So we tend to rely on more of our new products that we put out into the marketplace, RTP, which is now 6 years old, and some of the new enhancements that are going on top of RTP. And we stress kind of the innovation and the constant refreshment we're doing here at the clearinghouse. And I've spent a lot of time talking about our products, but we're also doing a lot of work kind of on our systems and our architecture as well. That's been probably a 10-year journey we've been on, modernizing our legacy infrastructure, bringing some of it to the cloud safely, of course, and making sure that we're able to move to the next stage, get the cost savings in the cloud, get the flexibility, be able to innovate quickly, adapt and change things as we're going along. So the legacy infrastructure modernization project that we've been on for a while is very important here at the clearinghouse. And it depends on your audience. If you're looking at prospective employees, you're looking to hire people, that's something we talk about Not so much that we were around, in 1853, but we're also now moving to the cloud, moving some new technologies as well. So I guess it really depends on our audience, who we're talking to, depends on what part of our history and our legacy we stress the most.
I also know our worlds have gotten a whole lot more complex over the last couple of years. Since the pandemic in particular, we have social media, we're leveraging virtual environments and technology to reach different audiences. And the audiences that we are talking to are very complex and diverse. It's not just your clients, it's your employees, it's your regulators, it's the public, it's your investors. So there's a lot that we have to think about as we're communicating. So can you talk a little bit about how this impacts your positioning and your communications? And Dipti, maybe you can start with that.
Sure. I think the core to that and this is hard to do, is simplicity and clarity of message. Right? I think given what we do and what our organizations do, we fall into the trap of having these long, very complex messages. Even our purpose, right, is very true to how we see the world, but it takes a little bit of investigation to connect the dots and make it relevant. So our quest has been a few things. One, can we strive for clarity across these stakeholders, so you sort of intuitively understand what we do and why we do it? It's a little bit of a work in progress. I think the second is how we show up. And when you think about our verbal brand or visual brand, it's the balance, again, going back for a hot second to the topic of legacy. How do you balance legacy with continuing to be authentic, but also continuing to be relevant, and what that means in our tone, our voice, our brand identity? And that's been some of the work we're doing, is know what to hold on to, know where to evolve. And it's not chasing, the next cool thing, even as marketers, which is tempting. How do you bring a level of discipline in how you go to market across all channels that speaks authentically to who you are with great level of clarity and consistency?
Yeah. And one of the things that we think a lot about is customizing our messages and tailoring them to our audiences, and doing more persona-based marketing, more persona-based communication, so that it's relevant and it talks to what motivates that particular stakeholder group. And it's hard. It's a lot more work. And it really does pay off. So it's worth investing in developing those personas, customizing those messages, and making sure you're using the right channels to reach the right audiences. But also importantly, all of your messages have to all ladder up to the company's messages. They all have to hang together. Otherwise, you're really just cannibalizing yourself. So it takes a lot of work to really just make sure that, everything sort of hangs together and ladders up to the company's overall positioning. And, we've been very purposefully working on that and doing that over the last couple of years. In fact, we're going through a rebranding exercise, and we just refreshed and are revisiting our vision, our mission, our persona, the purpose of the company, and our values. So we're in the process of kind of rolling out. It's exciting as we think about this, and really understanding that, what's going to get us forward isn't necessarily the same as what brought us to today, especially given the complexity of the audiences we're talking with.
Well, that's pretty exciting. We look forward to sort of seeing you go through the process. And how you evolve. The one thing I just want to sort of jump in with really briefly is your mention of investing in data and technology to be able to enable that relevancy. And I think it's where organizations such as ours have been a little behind the curve, right? It's sort of the classic B2B, that's sort of not where the investment often goes. But Marie, you've sort of blazed that trail for many, many years at DTCC, and it's something we're trying to really spend time on and thinking about, and that means investing in talent, in technology, as well as sort of the right tool set to be able to bring that clarity of messaging, but in deeply relevant ways across channels. And whether that's through segmentation and persona development, it's how you activate your channels. It's certainly a place we all as an industry need to do more in.
Yeah, and skill
Yeah.
set, right? You know,
Yes,
skill set
indeed.
as well, and especially over the last couple of years. So where are we upskilling our teams so that we can deliver, and where do we need to add new skills to the portfolio? So Greg, maybe you can touch on elements of all of this.
Yeah, you know, a lot of the things that you're discussing are things that we're looking at as well. You know, gone are the days where you can, you know, here's what my company does. Everybody fits into one box. Here's our messaging, and you just put it out to market. It's developing of those personas that are really important, depending on who you're trying to reach in the marketplace. And you know, one day you may be talking to this type of company. Other day maybe talking to a consumer. Sometimes you're talking to another financial services company or another market infrastructure provider, and having those personas and knowing when you need to switch is really important. And it's sometimes hard for the SMEs who are out in the field. One day they're at you know, an investor conference, and the next day they're talking to more of a consumer focused conference, and making that switch, and it's challenging. And then the data technology and then the technology behind the scenes is important. We're kind of going through that here, but it's also, hey, it's one thing to invest in the technology, but then if you don't have folks who know how to work it, know how to manipulate it, know how to make sense of what's coming out, the investment kind of, I wouldn't say it's lost, but it's much harder to get some return on it. Yeah, and we're kind of going through those I wouldn't call them growing pains, but you know, those thoughts and those processes as well. Like, hey, well, we invested in this, but where's the benefit? Like, well, we need some people to focus on that, and that's kind of their full-time job almost. Looking at that data and trying to figure out where it's going to take you in terms of your products, your messaging, that sort of thing. So it's fun. It's a challenge, and for an old organization, it's, you know, we're not born with that kind of I wouldn't say mentality, but so younger organizations, you know, they come to market thinking like, we have to do all of these things and leverage technology. For a company that's 170 years old, sometimes it takes a little work to talk to some of the folks here to say, hey, this is why it's important. This is where we need to go in the next 1, 2, 3, 5 years, and this is how we have to get there.
Yeah, and I think, you know, data and understanding and analyzing data, I mean, you can get so overwhelmed with all the information that's out there and the data that's at your fingertips. And that is one of the skill sets is, you know, marketing, communications, and data. You have to have your marketers that are equipped and skilled to understand and be able to use the data to make real-time changes and real-time refinements to campaigns and to communications so that they are getting the ROI that you're looking for. You can't do it 2 weeks after a campaign is over. You've got to really do it real time. And that's a new skill that I know we're all investing in and building so that we can stay relevant. Moving on, younger employees, the next generation of leaders, our early career talent. How do we stay relevant? Are they engaging with your organizations and your positioning, or is the company's history not appealing to them? How's that working, Greg, in the clearinghouse?
I guess it really depends on the type of role you're hiring for, or you're looking to outreach, or the company people who are inside the company. And for a lot of, you know, it's kind of actually, even for somebody who's even been at the company for a while, it's kind of hard to imagine. And we've been here for 170 years, 1853, before the Civil War. Like, what? You know, what were we doing all that time? We're an electronic payments company now. Well, you know, the history is 100 years before that, we were processing checks, and the banks were getting together at the end of every business day to move checks around and move gold back and forth, really. So that history is the legacy. I wouldn't say it's unattractive, but I think it's kind of hard to get your mind around. What we've been doing most recently for our internal employees and for prospective employees as well is really focus on the newer things we're doing. You know, lead with that. Say, hey, look, you know, we're in the cloud. We're going to the cloud. Well, here are some of the new technologies we're using. Here's some of the new programming language we're using for our developers. Here's how we're engaging on social media in a marketing aspect. Here's what we're going out to the market with our messaging and our stories. That resonates, I think, more with the younger audience. And then if they are employees, then they can get the history and the weight of that history as they're here. Like, look, this is why we're so reliable. We're built on reliability. It may be cool to be innovative and may be cool to roll out these new products, but at the end of the day, we have to be 99.999% uptime. Like there's no wiggle room there. We're never going to put something into market that's even going to drop us down to 99.997. So I don't know if it's a burden, but I think it's something you have to use to your advantage when you can, and then kind of bypass it and come back to it later when you need to.
Yeah. I think when you do it right, it's a great source of pride for employees, irrespective if they're early career or they're more tenured. When people can believe and understand the mission and understand that what each of our three organizations does for the industry, I think it is a source of pride. And it really connects our employees with the mission and helps them understand that what they do every day matters, keeping the markets running. So we do spend a lot of time really working to try to make that connection. And when we're out recruiting, DTCC is probably the most important company that, these potential hires have never heard of. We're competing with the Amazons and the Googles, for technology talent. We don't have that kind of money or resource to invest in marketing. So we have to be really creative and really develop and use some of those things we talked about earlier in the conversation, storytelling, connecting people in with the mission so that they do feel like they want to be part of the DTCC family and contribute to that overall mission. It's a challenge, but it's a great opportunity, and it does matter. And I know, Dipti, you've invested some time, even just in the 16 months that you've been at the company, in this exact thing.
For sure. And I often say for us, because a lot of folks don't understand the breadth and the depth of what we do, it requires that second date, right? Like you don't close the deal on the first date, you need the second date. But that's sort of the power of storytelling, is when people start doing, I use myself as the example. When I started my recruiting process to come to Broadridge, the first meeting was like, seems like an interesting global company. But it was only when I started to understand what they do and how they do it, where you start to realize the appeal of scale and complexity and impact. And so there's more, I think, collectively we can do as an industry to shine the light on it, much more so. It is harder, as Marie said, our budgets tend to be dramatically smaller. And so every story that you bring to market needs to sort of solve for multiple purposes, whether it's to talk to a client about the innovation you're driving, but also as a recruitment tool to show the innovation you're driving and how someone can be part of it. So yeah, there's definite synergies and sort of the challenges and opportunities we navigate together.
And I know we all face this challenge when, times are tough and you have to make cutbacks. The first areas that leadership often will turn to are what they perceive to be the discretionary spend, the marketing, the communications, the programs. So I'm sure we've all faced it, and I'm sure those that are listening to this conversation have faced it as well in their organizations. How do you demonstrate the value of the marketing and communications that your team leads? How do you demonstrate that to the leadership of the company and show value? Dipti, do you want to kick that one off?
Yeah, well, listen, that's the multi-million-dollar question, right, for us. I have tried, right, to be very transparent when I think about where we're going, what we do today, how it works. And in that, really define what is building, what are we investing in that's actually building for the future, what's running off the engines, and what does it take to keep the lights on? And where do we have more discretion where we might be testing and learning? So we've got, so that's been at least one way of sort of approaching what our resources and spend look like. The second part is to drive a more, and this is actually helpful. When the times are tough, it gives you the ability to have a dialogue around prioritization. And for us, we go really broad in the services we offer the industry, which means we have lots of stakeholders and lots of GMs, lots of salespeople, all of whom want lots of stuff from us. and being able to now bring in an orientation of prioritization, what's flagship, what's strategic, what's a nice to have, has been a way for us to at least preserve the investments in the right places and actually use these conversations as a way to shut down things that could have been hobbies or nice to haves or wish lists from one stakeholder versus the other.
That makes a lot of sense. Greg, can you talk about it from the clearinghouse perspective?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things we do is I regularly keep our executives up to date with some of the metrics we see from our social media spend and our outreach there, our web metrics for, we spent this, and this is how traffic increased on the website, traffic increased on our product pages. This is the number of extra referrals we received that went to our sales team, that sort of thing. The farther you go downstream, it's a little harder to quantify, but we try to do our best there. The other thing that, this isn't my doing, but this is just the way our executives have been kind of involved in our thought leadership. They're involved going out to the marketplace, all the way up to our CEO, talking to the market, and they kind of see how. Again, this isn't kind of a hard metric you can put in a spreadsheet, but they can see when they're out at a conference or they're talking to a group of investors on a call or they're talking to our banks. They get the feedback right away, and they also kind of get a little bit of that. We'll call it speaker's high. You go to a conference, you have a great conference session, you come off the stage, and everybody's wanting to talk to you. They get that. They say, "Wow, this is really work. I can see where this is adding value to our product lines." So when they're out in the market and they're meeting people face to face, they can see why it's important we invest in going to conferences, traveling to events, participating in even virtual events as well. So it's helpful that we have that. And looking back to my time here at TCH in 2018, we didn't kind of have that mentality because we hadn't put a new product to market for years. Luckily now we have RTP in the marketplace, and there's a big competitor coming this summer that's coming down the road. So we know we're going to be facing a larger competitor with much more budget for funding. So right now I don't have that problem in terms of trying to justify our spend, but I probably will one day. But right now I'm in a happy place.
Happy places are good. We all like the happy places. And look, the competitive landscape, you circled right back to the key point. We can't take our positions for granted. Right. And it's essential that we continue to invest and measure. And at DTCC, we've spent the last couple of years really putting some investment and structure into our data analytics. We invested in Marketo, which works with Salesforce, which is our CRM tool, so that we can manage our campaigns and we can really measure engagement and demonstrate how our campaigns are influencing our sales pipeline and converting into actual revenue, and how we're influencing the sales cycle. It's not perfect, it's not close to perfect, but it actually is incredibly helpful to us to make decisions on what types of marketing spend we make, to how we adjust our campaigns. And leadership is looking at it. They're taking notice. So when we do ask for money to do something, we can actually be able to tell the story of how it's worked in the past and why we want to make that investment. So as we continue to do this, I'm sure we will get more mature and we'll get better and more sophisticated. But it's really important to dip your toe in the water. And, we're definitely learning more as we go. So I know we are closing in on time. I want to leave a few minutes for audience questions, but I do want to close out the moderated section of our conversation by just asking each of you if you can share just some quick thoughts on some of the opportunities and challenges that lie ahead for your respective organizations. So Greg, why don't you start that one?
Sure. So I guess the big challenge for us is finding those stories, finding new and fresh stories that resonate, and try to keep them unique. Right? We found a couple of stories that kind of tell a couple of narratives that tell the story of the clearinghouse in ways that resonate with more than just the banking payments folks who are our bread and butter clients, but through the broader market. But finding new and unique ones to get out to the market is always a challenge. And I spend a lot of time working with our communications folks here and our product people, saying what's coming up, what's working, what do you see? We're trying to generate those stories. And then, the biggest challenge for us is going to be that the large competitor that's coming to market in July, which we won't name, but they're big and they're large and they're very well funded, and that's going to be our focus for the next few years. We do have a 5-year head start, so I think we're in pretty good shape.
That's great. Dipti.
Sure. So I'll sort of maybe focus on the question from a marketing angle very specifically. Listen, Broadridge, has had a fantastic trajectory of growth, and we feel really good about where we're going and how we're going to get there, and the strategy that we have to support it, which is going to require a level of discipline and consistent investment in modernizing and innovating. I think as a marketing team, we have a very clear mission of being seen as a growth lever, right? It's a declared mission for this team. And the work we need to do ahead over the next many years is how we consistently prove that out. When at the same time that you're upskilling talent, you're investing in infrastructure and technology and data, there's a substantial amount of test and learn that you have to do before you can start to sort of prove out the winning playbooks at a time where everybody wants everything right now. So that's the balance we're often trying to strike. And then on the brand side of the story, so that's sort of, I would say, the maturity of our marketing ecosystem and how do we get there sooner. On the brand side, I think it's the discipline of representing our clearest message, not every shining light that we want to bring through for an organization that can go really broad and very deep very quickly. With multiple stakeholders, and it's a culture that is oriented around consensus, and everyone gets to have a say. And how do you then have a level of clarity on who it is you want to be and how you want to show up in market? So we've got some work to do in sort of the clarification of our brand and storytelling, and we're tweaking around the edges right now. But we're hoping we can make a few deep incisions in some places to make the impact better, and then continue to just invest in our marketing organization and drive a level of maturity.
Well, that's great. And I would say for each of our organizations, I think the future is incredibly bright. We are really excited at DTCC to launch our new positioning, our new branding in the second part of this year. We have a relatively new CEO with a bold agenda. As we move from utility to strategic partner with the industry, we truly believe our role as a company is to help lead and anticipate and help bring the industry forward. And I think that is a challenge for us in marketing and communications to help be at the forefront of that. So I'm super optimistic and excited, and I'm really happy that we had an opportunity to chat, the three of us. And I know that we have had a very engaged and patient audience. We do have one really interesting question that I noticed in the chat. And to kick off the questions, we haven't talked or mentioned the word crisis, which is a bad word. It's like a swear word in our vernacular, but we all deal with crises. So the question is, how do we prepare for and manage crises? And I certainly can kick that one off because we get a lot of opportunities to do tabletops and practice. We have very, very detailed business continuity and resiliency plans. And, we anticipate, any type of business disruption ranging from a cyber incident to a weather-related disruption, which in some cases is reality. I live in Tampa, Florida, so we get real practice at that one. But also, outages, systems outages, incidents that impact our clients. So we have very, very detailed scenario planning, and we do tabletops and practice it quite regularly. And then you have those industry-wide crises. Everybody will remember the meme stock crisis from January of 2021, which, really, was a very industry-wide crisis that DTCC was very much in the middle of, and having to explain what we do for the very first time to audiences that never heard of DTCC before. And you're dealing with social media, you're dealing with Congress, who, has various levels of understanding, and really trying to educate and also manage the conversation and manage the way forward. So there are situations that you practice for over and over again and that you have in your playbooks. And then there are ones that you really just have to leverage the judgment and experience and skill set of the team, the business team, the technology team, the marketing and PR team to manage through. And you have to have leadership that trusts your instincts and judgment. And I am very fortunate to say that I do. So Dipti and Greg, please, I know you also have a lot of experience in this.
Well, my short answer is what she said, right? I think our playbooks are incredibly similar, our process, how we navigate. So Greg, over to you.
Yeah, and I think we're probably on some of these same tabletop exercises through SIFMA and FSISAC, and I think there's probably another one tomorrow we're doing for cyber. So we're involved in a lot of those as well at the clearinghouse. Also, when kind of banking and specific crises come up, like the ones we just went through with, I wouldn't call it a huge. It was a big crisis, but it wasn't as big as the financial crisis. But with Silicon Valley Bank, being owned by 22 banks, I already have a network of communications folks that we spin up at our emergency calls, and we get on right away to say, okay, how is it affecting this financial institution? Is there any, residual effects going across? What's happening? What's the messaging going to be that's going out? So we have those, and then we have the FSISACs of the world where we deal with, cyber incidents or technology incidents or other risks that are out there as well. So again, it's follow the, we have the playbooks, we have the scripts, but one of the things we discover is that, the next crisis is never what we had last year or 8 years ago or 10 years ago. It's always something new, something else happens, and you have to kind of think on your feet and look at some of the experience of the folks who have been through it before. What works, what doesn't work, and kind of go back to the basics and say, okay, this is what we have to do. Here's our message, and here's how we're going to kind of find all the information we need quickly and move forward. Because I think with Silicon Valley Bank and some of the bank failures, it was, it wasn't a slow thing that happened. It was within 24 hours, it went from everything's fine to, it's shutting down. So you have to be really quick and know where to find the information. So.
Exactly. Well, I know we are up at time. I would like to thank the both of you. It was just a great pleasure doing this with you. Ashley from Financial Narrative, thank you for inviting us. It was an honor. And for our engaged audience, thank you. I wish all of you a good rest of your day, and we'll look forward to hopefully staying connected. Take care, everyone.